My name is Ameet Hindocha, and I'm here to talk about my addiction. I'm a slave to the intoxicating effects of constructing geometric patterns. But it's okay, I'm convinced it's good for me. And by the end of this week, I'm sure my fellow speakers and I will have got some of you hooked too. Having studied graphic design at Camberwell College of Art, where I now also teach, I spent my whole career dabbling with elements of geometry in an uninformed way through commercial design work and personal projects. Grids, repetition, natural pattern, and the influence of science and maths were recurring themes in my work, but I didn't see the underlying connections until I attended a couple of short courses with Tom Bree at the Prince's School of Traditional Arts in London. Within a few weeks, I had the powerful realization that the study and practice of geometry and pattern allowed me to immerse myself in all these subjects and find the dots that connect them all together. Also, I already had a tool set of practical image-making techniques that I had developed and refined through my role teaching art and design students at the University of the Arts, London. Not only was the development of geometric structures endlessly fascinating, but I could express each of these patterns using a range of processes and media. I'd always found that each creative act leads to a further branching of ideas, and now with this newfound foundation of geometry, I was overwhelmed and excited by where I could take this. I've always had the tendency to work on multiple projects simultaneously, which feed into each other. Today I'd mainly like to focus on one open-ended project, which has allowed me to explore the structural possibilities of geometry within an aesthetic, visual, and process-led framework. Not only that, but it's allowed me to tap into an ancient tradition of design and explore it with the tools available today and the possibilities they offer. For me, the creative process is largely about learning and experimentation. The outcomes that appear along the way are just markers to show the direction of the research and development of ideas. As such, each stage reached is just a node from which many more directions can branch out. These are like the crucial intersections of lines which play a central role in the development of any geometric design. The beauty of geometry as a lexicon of design is that it is universal and is a visual representation of the number patterns which govern the way the universe works. When combined with the ever-expanding possibilities and the methods of application and expression of these forms, both traditional and contemporary, it feels like an inexhaustible resource. The initial inspiration for the project came from one of the appendices in Dowd Sutton's incredibly informative book, Islamic Design, published by Wooden Books. This page suggests creating tiles based on a 10-fold grid created by dividing a circle into 10 equal divisions. These tiles could then be configured in countless ways to create many intricate pattern variations. This family of patterns can be seen all over the Islamic world from a range of time periods. However, the Persians had a particular affinity for these 10-fold patterns, and some of the most eloquent examples of their use can be found in Iran. Here you can see an example of a 10-fold pattern rendered in tiles at the Darb-e-Imam shrine in Isfahan, Iran. Beautifully juxtaposed with a range of other patterns, this pattern alone is a masterpiece which demonstrates a particular quality of 10-fold patterns, that of self-similarity. You can see that the same shapes in the small-scale pattern also occur at a larger scale, and this has been highlighted with the blue lines. This example uses a similar effect with the large forms raised and filled with arabesque motifs to create a harmonious rhythm. As I researched these forms further, I soon came across Peter Liu and Paul Steinhardt's 2007 paper, which proposed that ancient craftsmen may have used a set of 5 tiles based on decagonal symmetry to piece together large and intricate patterns which retained accuracy rather than constructing their designs with ruler and compass. This image from the Topkapi scroll, located here in Istanbul, provides a strong basis for this suggestion. You can see in black, these lines, the main pattern, the small scale pattern. In solid red, these larger lines, see a large-scale version of the same shapes occurring. So if I just highlight this squashed hexagon there, and surrounding it in red, a larger version of the same tile. And again here, this small kite shape here, and in red, a larger version of the same form. The dotted red lines, these faint lines underneath, show polygons that relate to the pattern. These are what Liu and Steinhardt referred to as Gire tiles. Looking at the qualities of these tiles in more detail, they all have internal angles which are multiples of 36 degrees, or 1/10 of a circle. The sides of each tile are the same length, and the interlaced lines meet at the centre of each side at the same angle, something we discussed yesterday. This allows the tiles to be joined together to cover a flat plane and for the interlacing lines to always connect. So here we can see a larger configuration of these tiles. And if we add the interlaced lines, we have this. And then we remove the tile outlines and we're left with the pattern itself. So you can see that this is a convincing method, whether or not the craftsmen of the past used it. My son had also just turned 3 and was showing an interest in playing with wooden shapes. So the first prototype I made of these tiles came in the unassuming form of a toy for him. These tiles were cut from plywood using a laser cutter. To give you an idea of what a laser cutter does, it uses a digital vector drawing to guide a laser to cut or engrave a wide range of materials, including wood, plastic, fabric, paper, and some machines can cut metal and glass. Here you can see the laser cutter engraving a 10-pointed star. And here it's actually cutting through the material. I wouldn't have been able to push this project forwards without access to the facilities at the University of the Arts London and without the support and knowledge of my colleagues. So big thanks to all of them. Playing with the tiles and exploring the different configurations wormed its way into my subconscious, and I was woken up one night by the striking thought that I should try printing from the tiles. I've always been drawn to printmaking as a methodical, hands-on approach to image making, and it seemed the perfect way to extend the modular method of creating geometric patterns that the tiles offered. I decided to cut a second set of tiles in acrylic to provide a flatter printed surface for the interlaced lines to stand out against. Next, I took them into the print studio, inked them up, and took a relief print. A relief print is made by rolling ink onto a surface and transferring that ink to paper using a press. This is the first print I made using these tiles. What I love about printmaking is its analog nature. The tactility of the paper, the imperfections and variations that arise naturally out of the process give life to the images. As a contrast to digital methods, it's a slow and methodical process, but that time is valuable thinking time. As with drawing geometric patterns by hand, the process involves a lot of repetition, but the active meditative state that this creates allows you to develop a deeper insight into what you're doing and why. With computers, it's all too easy to get lost in the vortex of possibilities and lose sight of your aims. Printmaking is an immersive process that encourages thinking through doing. This slowness of process also invites step-by-step refinements in technique. I wasn't entirely happy with how the borders of the tiles were so visible and disrupted the continuity of the interlaced lines. Even though the laser cutter removes a minimal amount of material along the cut edge, there's still enough lost to stop the tiles quite touching each other smoothly. This led me back to the shapes that are created by the connecting lines rather than by the tiles that contain them. I started to think about developing the family of forms and identified the 8 main shapes that provided the basis of this vocabulary. It's a simple vocabulary, but the language is complex. Research and papers by Roger Penrose, Peter Cromwell, Jay Bonner and Jean-Marc Castera played a huge role in developing my understanding of this language, and this method of using pre-cut tiles to piece together designs offered an interesting alternative way of exploring the constructions to the ruler and compass methods I'd originally learned. Jean-Marc's book Arabesque outlines a similar approach with 8-fold geometry, which I believe he's going to be exploring with you all later on today. Also, his paper Flying Patterns provided much inspiration and understanding, although I think there's a bit more digging to do with that one. Yeah, I just wanted to highlight up here, these are he's highlighted 12 shapes that arise from this system. I was using 8, there's actually 5 that form the basis of that family, and by construction you can kind of extend that family a bit further. Anyway, he's chosen 12, I chose to use 8, but there's still many possibilities within either of those. I've continued exploring these forms through drawing and with the tiles by hand and computer, because each method has different nuances which lead to different insights and understanding about the underlying geometry. There is certainly a contemplative aspect to the act of drawing geometric patterns by hand. This is complemented by taking an analytical approach, enhanced by a command of digital tools such as Illustrator, Rhino or AutoCAD. One particularly interesting quality of these 10-fold designs that appeals to me is that they exhibit self-similarity. In this drawing, you can see the small forms coloured in red and blue occur at a larger scale by joining together the centres of the 10-pointed stars that are visible in the smaller scale design. This quality is referred to as self-similar or fractaline. Conceptually, this is an embodiment of the similarity in the rhythms and patterns of the cosmos with those on Earth and in our own bodies. The same patterns occur in the microcosm and the macrocosm. In order for the tiles to fit together, they need to be constructed at proportionally correct size to each other. Here's an outline of how the 8 shapes arise from a 10-fold grid. The first 5 shapes in the top row form a pattern which is called al-Gireh, forgive my pronunciation, which translates as the mother of knots. By adding a few more lines to the grid, we can create the last 3 shapes which extend the family to allow more permutations. I refer to this set as the 10-3 set because they arise from a 10-pointed star. Actually, referring to Jean-Marc's talk on the first day, he talked about starry family and flowery family. They're the same thing. It's just my reason for referring to these as 10-3 is that this is the decagonal tile, and it's divided into 10. And the way you create this particular star is by joining every 3rd point. So you start there, skip 1, skip 2, join to the 3rd, skip 1, skip 2, join to the 3rd. You continue like that, and this gives you this central star, these kite shapes, and then by extension of lines, you get the perfect pentagon, and the other shapes arise in a similar way. There is another family, another vocabulary of forms that arise from putting a 10-4 star in the Gireh tile, one which is compatible with the 10-3 set but has a different feel. So again here, 10-4 star, starting here, this 1, 2, 3, join to there, 1, 2, 3, join to the 4th, etc. And this gives you this slightly more pointy star and gives you these petal shapes, or saft. And here we can see the tiling in blue, marked in grey with the thick lines is the 10-3 set, and then marked in finer lines is the 10-4 set. So they're all related to each other. Many outstanding examples of this system can be seen right here in Istanbul. This one, I'm not sure if that's at the Sultanahmet Mosque, but I saw many similar patterns carved into doors there. Lots of interesting tenfold. In fact, very interesting ones combining the two families as well. So a particular characteristic of these 10-4 patterns is this petal. So you get this rosette, and in between you often get these perfect 5-pointed stars. 5-pointed stars are a feature of a whole range of Islamic patterns, but these are the only ones where they come out perfect. So it's a 5-pointed star coming from a 10-fold symmetry, and you get this perfect star. So this is a particularly nice quality of it. There are also stunning examples in the Moroccan and Persian traditions. This example is from the Bou Inania Madrasa in Fez, Morocco. These shapes can be created at a proportionally related size to the 10-3 set as shown here. There are of course more shapes that arise from experimenting with making patterns from these. But this set is the basic vocabulary which offers vast possibilities for pattern creation. So back to the tiles, I made a new set of the 8 shapes in the 10-3 set and started making patterns and prints from them. So here you can see the tiles configured into a design. This is those tiles inked, and this is the print. Without the interruption of the underlying tiles, the pattern came across much more strongly. The tiles also have further creative potential in themselves. And here is that same design inked and printed. Now when I tried creating a design which used all filled in shapes with clear channels, I realized the shapes would need to be cut with an offset to make the channels consistent. So you can see sometimes the channels wobble around, and it's because these shapes actually are designed to be fitted right together without gaps. And then once the gaps are introduced, the proportions get lost. Nevertheless, I printed a few more images. There's the tiles inked, and this allowed me to refine the printing process and experiment with 2 colors. It's the print that results from that. This set opened further design possibilities. One aspect which I found appealing was that the modular approach to creating patterns offered the possibility to use symmetrical elements in a non-symmetrical composition. So far I've been cutting the tiles from acrylic in patterns so as to leave no wastage of the material, but with the channels the wastage became something interesting in its own right. Now all of this happened over the span of just over a year, as and when I could get access to the facilities at Camberwell College. This summer I was able to devote several weeks to focus on this project and create a set of new limited edition prints. I started by cutting a set of the 10-4 tiles, and having explored the 8-fold Zelig tiles based on the vocabulary defined by currently arrived Jean-Marc, I cut a set of these tiles as well. I love how this process divides a flat sheet of material into an intricate and beautiful pattern which provides the seeds for countless more, and how the printing process allows for another stage of involvement in how the pattern is perceived through texture and colour. Building up a diverse vocabulary of geometric forms in this way, especially for printing, is not dissimilar to using a traditional letterpress to create and print sentences, and it reinforces the analogy with language. After much beavering away, many evenings of meticulously sticking down individual tiles into patterns, I prepared a whole range of patterns, each divided into 2 colours. From here, I was able to immerse myself in the printing process. One of my favourite aspects of printmaking is the physicality of the process and the resulting outcomes. It's also a sensory activity which benefits from all the senses. The smell of the inks, listening to the sound of the rolling of ink to determine the correct consistency, feeling the pressure of the press. At the same time as engaging in a physical activity, the mind is constantly engaged in making design choices. Choosing and mixing colours, experimenting with papers, and trying the patterns as embossings, where the uninked tiles are pressed into damp paper. I felt these were particularly successful because they emphasise the physicality of the process and create a tactile outcome where the textural qualities of the paper become one with the pattern. Most of the prints you can see here are available for sale from my website, and more will be added in the coming weeks. And due to the nature of the process, once the tiles have been dismantled, the same design will never be replicated. To push the project in more interesting directions, I won't be recreating the same design in the same colours again, so these are available until the limited editions of between 5 and 10 prints are sold. I've reached one of the intersections or nodes in the creative process that I mentioned before, and a chance to assess the possible future directions for this project. As well as continuing to explore the languages based on these tile sets, I hope to explore the fractal potential of both 10 and 8-fold symmetry through the tiles and their subdivision into smaller tiles. Another line of inquiry would look into the connections with Penrose and Aman-Binka tilings and the aperiodic patterns they create. Small-scale patterns or perhaps arabesque motifs could be engraved into the tiles. The tiles could be cut from different materials. The link between 10-fold symmetry and the golden ratio, a topic which I haven't even mentioned here, could be explored further. It goes on, and I know that each of these experiments will lead to more ideas, so I can see this becoming an ongoing activity which will feed from and into other projects I work on. I wanted to focus mainly on this project, but I think it's valuable to see this in the context of some of my other work. The backbone of my work comes from drawing. This is a piece which was commissioned by musician DJ Food, with whom I collaborated on an audiovisual piece last year. Revealing the underlying construction, which is usually removed in the final design, is for me a key part of the final image, akin to experiencing a situation with deeper clarity. The analog and the digital have a constant interplay in the development of my work, one process constantly informing the next. The tactility, slowness and imperfection of hand drawing complements the precision and speed of digital drawing. These drawings develop into designs which are applied through other print techniques, laser cutting, digital fabrication and animation. So this is a process which I've used quite a lot recently called photopolymer printing, and it involves using a light sensitive plate, exposing it to light. The parts that receive light become hard, the parts which don't receive light stay soft, and then when you wash it in water you end up with a raised surface. This is the plate with ink on it. And then using a press, you can make a relief print from that. This is an example of the final relief print. This is an example of another photopolymer plate. And this is the resulting print. The undulating lines in the print are accentuated by the varying line thicknesses, and these types of inconsistencies that arise through the printing process add a quality to it that digital printouts obviously don't really have. And related to that, this is a laser etched acrylic, fluorescent acrylic. Motion allows yet another dimension with which to appreciate the beauty of geometric patterns. Playing in the background are some extracts from another collaborative audio-visual project with musician and filmmaker Ali Wade, which should be released today to promote his new album. I'll post details on my Instagram page and you can see more there. For me, concept and process are intimately connected and inform each other constantly. The conceptual depth of geometric art contained in the metaphysical and cosmological symbolism of number, combined with the intellectual depth of its connection with mathematics, provide a rich area for exploration. The way this conceptual basis informs the processes and method of expression allow for a constant dialogue. The interplay of digital and analog processes, of ancient and modern understanding of nature, maths and science, creates a dialogue through which unique processes and outcomes arise, as demonstrated in nature itself. The subtleties of each process feeding into the subtleties of another to open new creative avenues. At times, I feel that the practice of geometry is like tuning into and channeling a deeply elemental and creative force. The primordial archetypal geometric forms, which humans connect with deeply and are perceptible all around us, provide a solid foundation for design. Through geometric art and pattern, we strive to create an embodiment of the ideal geometric archetypes, but through our being human, we necessarily introduce inconsistencies which breathe life into the images. I find it a deeply stimulating practice on many levels. It's creative, universal, cerebral yet intuitive, contemplative yet analytical. It gives us an insight into the forces that shape everything around and within us. By taking an openly exploratory and practical approach to geometric art, I found that the analog and the digital, the traditional and the contemporary, the contemplative and the analytical are not opposing elements, but complementary ones which allow for full and deep exploration of geometry as a creative language. I'd like to give huge thanks and respect to all other geometers past and present for contributing to a tradition and practice which I feel plays an important role in enforcing our interconnectedness with nature and one another. I must also give extra special thanks to Dawood Sutton, who not only inspired my initial interest in geometric pattern design through his book Islamic Design, but has subsequently given me much valuable personal guidance, direction and encouragement. Thank you all for listening, and I'm happy to answer any questions, and once we're finished with that, I've brought some of the prints that, obviously this kind of thing, best to have a look at it, so you can come and have a look. Thank you.